do want to do this, they will assume you're already a good scientist. They'll check that out. Interviews I've done, I remember saying, do you want me to tell you about their science? And remember the RCMP head going to me, we already know everything about them and everything about you. I want to know their emotional stability. So it isn't enough just to record your data properly. You have to have sort of the right emotional mindset. I did notice they were looking for autopsy assistants again here in the province. Same idea. Essential work, but it could be a little different than I think most folks are prepared for. Here, that cheer everybody up. Look how happy you are. Yay. It's that. It's real science. So you're going to find this hard to believe, but every so often in science, whether you're doing testing, production, or some kind of other activity, you're going to make a mistake. Mistakes happen, and we call those errors. Errors are documented in a company internally. Errors are documented by external auditors. Now, if you make an error in a lab book for me, I'll have you put a single line through it and initial it. However, other places may require you to put a single line through it, initial it, write down a code for the type of error, and then get your supervisor to sign off. I'm not kidding. Lulu, that grumpy, seriously. I've picked some error types. The list is much longer. You might make an incorrect entry. You literally typed in the wrong number. Oops. How do you get rid of it? Single stroke crossout. Why is it a single stroke?
So it'll still be readable?
Yeah, you have to demonstrate what happened. It is critical that nothing is ever hidden. Like, for example, removing a page can get you fired on the spot. It's deadly serious. An incorrect date. This tends to happen when people go back and change things and write things down. That is a big problem. 3 kinds of level of oops in science. There's what we call an incident. As an auditor, an incident would be you missed a date. It's a one-off. I'm going to write it in my own personal report. I'm not going to publish it. A minor nonconformance would be, man, you've got like a number of missing dates here. Does your procedure not say to write these down? A major nonconformance would be you hiding data or changing an assay. That is a serious thing with a serious response. There could be a little incident, a minor nonconformance, or a major one. 3 completely different levels. And when we do work, all of us are going to make mistakes. It's important you're honest about it and go through the steps to correct it. It's going to happen. You're doing 1,000 things a day. Something's going to go wrong. Calculation errors. Yep, they're going to happen. The only place you are going to do your calculations is written down permanently into your lab book. We don't write on napkins. Oh, I've yelled at people for that. We don't write ever S&D on our phone or onto our lab coat, which I've seen PhDs do. Really, seriously, that got real ugly. I can cut off your arm and put it in the vault, but I don't think you're going to like that. Absolutely no, that's not going to happen. Calculations are there, so if something goes wrong, we can go back and track through it. It is considered a vital part of how we record data. Don't try to make it look pretty. Don't try to make it look good. As a scientist, we observe and we report. That's it. We're not here to make fancy decisions. We're here to do the science, record the values. If something's wrong, you tell people. I want to know. I'm thankful if one of my employees tells me something wrong. That's important. I need to know. I do not want the medicine going out the door and poisoning 30,000 people, thank you. So calculations are critical. If they're wrong, even if the whole page is wrong, you put a single line through the whole page and you initial it. That page legally is now invisible, gone. Your book could be 90 pages that are single stroke cross out and 10 pages of writing. That's perfectly acceptable. Nothing is hidden. And they're deadly serious about that. Hardware equipment error. Kept getting outliers H2. You got to write it down. There has to be a record. You can't just say, I'm going to skip it. Late submissions. Yeah. This is not a good thing. The tests are supposed to be finished by 3. Someone takes the book home and enters an incorrect date, that's serious. Just so you know how my labs work, just to make you fear me a little more, you arrive, Rem, before the lab starts, I lock the door at 9 o'clock sharp or 1 o'clock sharp. That's it, that's all. The plane leaves, we're going to Jamaica, you're on the plane or you're not. You sign in, I close the book at 9:00. So no amount of squawking will convince me otherwise, and I love to argue, so it's just not a great thing. When you go to leave the lab, your book is brought to the front, and I put a time signature stamp on it where you finished your work. And that's a record of everything you did in that room. Everything in that book after that was done at a different date and time. So remember, legal document, messing with date and time is absolutely not allowed under any circumstances. Transcription errors. Yeah. Where do I see lots of these? It's a group of 3 people in the lab. One person is writing most things down. Someone else is copying it. Ballodium chloride, that's not even a word. So what happens is you get errors in transposing things. You're copying numbers, you're copying words. It happens, it's wrong, you have to correct it. Unauthorized entry. Ooh, I walked over and wrote something into your book. It's not my book. You would have to circle it. You would have to write down unauthorized entry and sign and date it. And if that goes on consistently, you're going to have to fill out a form and get me to stop doing that. That is a real problem. I'll just sign it for you. Yeah, unless you're my supervisor, that isn't going to work. It's a very serious maneuver. Did you guys go through these error levels before? You know all of them?
Yeah.
Rim, I can't trust you. You didn't know what an anhydride was. All right. Lab notebooks. Super easy. And yet I have consistently seen these done wrong in audits, which is really strange. To be fair, most people in universities will never have done this. This is something you need to describe in your resume. It's something you need to be able to back up. And if you're doing your books right, you should take them to an interview. I think I mentioned this before in the last course, but I've had students take their lab books in, and when they're asked at the end of the interview, they go, "Do you record your data according to ISO?" And they slide their book across the desk for them to see it. And I've had people win interviews on the spot for that. It's a money skill. But if you're going to put down compliant lab notebooks in your resume, make sure you can explain what you mean and you can back it up. I reviewed a resume last week. The first line was, ready? Complaint lab notebooks. Make sure it's compliant and not complaint, because that just doesn't look right. Just saying. All right.
David, so besides the lab book, we can have lab notebooks?
So the lab notebook is a hardbound book. Physical.
okay.
What I want to do here is go through an example that's perfectly acceptable in terms of academic reports. And the people who did this, I'm not going to give any names, they think it's really great. Allow me, as a merciless auditor, to shred this piece of crap into the crap pile that it is, and then burn it to the ground. They won't let me have matches in the lab anymore after the unpleasantness, says Braden. So unfair. All right. So what do we got? Title. Can you read me the title? Oops. Project number, RP, no, number. In my case, I was putting out between 12 and 20 lab notebooks completed per year. Oh, you may just be working on one little lab book for a course. Trust me, in the real world, at full speed, you're flying through these things. It's got a page number. Good. So it says repeat Western for Lysic comparison gel. So already it said it's doing a procedure. There's no reference to where the procedure is other than a general name. There's no number. And it says right here, continued from page what? Here's the secret. If you're writing and it's continued on the next page, you need to say continued on page 7. And on the top of page 7, you need to say continued from page 6. Once it goes out of sight, you have to do that. Don't forget. You don't have to have the word title and the page number permanently on there. You can write them on yourself with permanent ink. But they do have to be there. As an auditor, The very first things I do looking at a page, I look title, date, number, signature. If I don't see those 4 things, I don't read the page. It's over. It is not a legal document without those things on it. Look here, made of 14% gel. That's lovely. Like Jello pudding. There's the manufacturer, the lot number, the expiry. There's nothing here. Did you make that gel with ether or did you use double distilled water? This is garbage. Load the gel. I forgot the blank. What blank? This is completely bad. Remember to mark the membrane to avoid potential confusion. I'm already confused. 5 microliters of marker. Manufacturer, lot number, product number, expiry. Where is it? There's nothing here. I absolutely guarantee this would fail the audit. I would stop auditing right through here and say, you've got a major nonconformance. We're shutting you down. I'll give you a month to get your act together. It's that serious. What else we got here? 25 liters, microliters of sample. What sample? Run at 75 volts. Lulu, what are we running at 75 volts? Is it like a Bose sound system? It's not. Oh, I don't know either. Increase to 100 volts after gel. Transfer ON. Anybody know what that means? Oh, serial number died? I have no idea what this means. This is not professional work. And again, the person who did this is probably really proud of it. So in real life, in real time when I'm auditing, I'm not shrieking and getting mad like I am now. I just start asking questions, because people are already pretty freaked out, right? What else we got here? Wash twice with TBST. Well, I know it's a buffer, but again, no recipe, no nothing. As an auditor, I see 10 minutes. Can you show me the record for your calibrated stopwatch that you used to measure 10 minutes? When you people do labs for me, about half the stopwatches I give you will have expired calibration dates. I expect you to catch that. Oh, Anissa, I'm so mean. No, you folks are that good. You require and deserve a coach who's actually going to test you up at speed. What else do we have here? Incubation. Oh, time, fine. Add 1% or antibody. It doesn't even say what the antibodies are. HMGBI, probably the buffer. Incubate for 2 hours. Doesn't say a temperature. Rocking it. Wash it with a buffer 4 times for another hour. Could you guys reproduce this work? It's, again, someone's proud of this, It's, in a way, it's tragic. The worst I've gone into are some of the medical research labs. They're all doctors and PhDs. They've never heard of the compliance or the lab notebook stuff. And the work is incredibly sincere, and a lot of work was done. And at the end of it, the meeting, I'll say, look, this is really great work, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to recommend that all this work is repeated in a professional lab. And what do you mean we're not professional? I go, no, your intent was professional. The way you captured the work is not. It's not legal work. And your lab book is step 1. If you do this, it's over before it starts. I've had lots of people go to work in a lab and they said they don't care at all about the lab books. I don't care if they don't care. You should do the right thing. It counts. All right. 1% milk. Does milk have an expiry date? Can you leave it in the fridge for 3 years? It doesn't say if that's the milk of a blue whale. The milk of a blue whale is built to add 237 pounds to a blue whale calf per day. I'm thinking that might be the wrong milk. Yeah. I just can't go through this. It's driving me crazy. Membrane, NaOH, no records, nothing. Garbage, garbage, garbage. Oh, by the way, look, late entry, double crossed out, not signed off. It's 5% milk, and it's done with a different pen. Ouch. So there's 160 errors on this page? That's painful. Okay, we go down here. It says sign it. Nope, not done. Date, not done. Witness, not done. Oh, there's a date over here. Okay, great. Yeah, unfortunately, this is just not acceptable work. It is not hard to do this right. This is wrong everywhere. The rules. I know people have taught you this. It's important enough that I'm going to nag you again. Your work is good enough for me to take the time to nag you. I'm a mean coach. I intend to get this right. It has to be a hardbound book. Yes, I know you found something very cool at Dollarama with a paisley cover that's all sparkly. Those sparkles are super cool, but you can't use it for this. Sparkly. Hardbound book, it has to have non-removable pages, permanent pages. They have to be numbered. You can number them yourself, the permanent ink pen. And the work and the entries you make have to be completed during the work period. You do not take them home. Many places will take the books from you at the end of the day and lock them down in a secure document area. They're legal documents. They are not going to play around with it. Why am I ever mean? The reason it's locked down is so there's no additional substitutions or changes after the fact. The rule is you write it down and you leave it. We're not making a judgment. It's like reporting the weather. If it's snowing, you say it's snowing. You don't give a commentary on your lifelong hatred of snow. You can think it, but you don't say it. If someone's taking home records and altering them, that is a major nonconformance, and people are typically fired for stuff like that. It is not a joke. Wow, scary. Number one, all work is titled and described. That means all of your calculations, the method, you could write out the method, or you could say method following SOP RP-27. You could refer to an established document. In a big place, that's probably what you're going to do. You're not going to write it out every time. Why do you do it? This is for later audits. There's two kinds of audits you should expect. Internal audits are people who work for your organization. They're on your team. They're trying to answer these questions before an external auditor comes in, where it's serious. So you have to expect that. You're going to have reviews, you're going to do audits to show every piece of work you have done. Every test, every analysis, every experiment is written up. So one, it's legal, but two, you can find it and demonstrate it at any time easily. No one thinks you're going to find it in 5 seconds, but if I say, I'm coming in tomorrow, I want to see your work for the mass spectrometer in 2019 between March and April. Can you have those records ready for me tomorrow morning? I expect them to be on my desk at 8 o'clock. So there's a reason. It's not like find them instantly, but you have to have all those documents secured. In a big place, we'll have several people doing nothing but monitor, maintain, and keep those documents functional so this can actually occur. Wow, scary stuff. Everything you use, all of the hardware, all of the chemicals are recorded, not like that piece of garbage we just reviewed. Who is the manufacturer? What is the name of it? Does it have a lot number? Does it have a serial number? Does it have an expiry date? If it's expired and someone says you should use it, you need to get that signed off. You will require authorization. The slang is a PTU, permission to use, but the formal term is you need authorization to do something outside of the written instructions. Are you going to use an outlier H2? H2? Are you going to include that outlier? Do you have authorization for that? Right? Saying you'll get authorization is a good way of dealing it. There's a protocol for all that. It could be expired. It could not be expired. The idea as well is I can walk in and duplicate your work. It has to be that good. Everything exactly as you did it is listed. The exact method is listed, and the results are listed. I should be able to, with no sweat or freaking out, to track through it. It is not hard, but you need to get used to writing things down like this. Like, folks, I learned how to do this. I'm a complete idiot. Do you know how many sticks they had to hit me with to get me to do this? It was really painful, but eventually I learned. You people are smart and alert. You'll probably do it right away. Dates of daily standardization and calibration has to be done. Your resume should say daily performance evaluation for analytical equipment. Daily performance evaluation for analytical equipment. That is when you standardize and calibrate. You are ensuring that that device worked within defined specifications or control limits. We're not doing it because it's fun. Sure, it's cute to see you guys all fighting over a balance and fighting for those little tiny weights that are so adorably cute. But when you say that performance evaluation, you should also give examples. pH meters, spectrophotometers, analytical balances. You don't just say you've done it. You need to be able to back it up. You don't just say HPLC. You say HPLC for organic molecules and biomolecules and give an example, fructose, caffeine. You need to provide real-world examples. Wow, my Vermeem, good for me. I should wear my black suit and my Pulp Fiction ponytail. You know, I look like an auditor, literally out of that movie. People look real nervous when I walk in. I hardly ever kill anybody by accident. Okay. Every page has to be signed. This is an obligation. When you sign that, you're legally signing it. If it's fraud, you are legally accepting fraud. Where does that become scary? You're going to be the supervisor at some point. Someone's going to give you a stack of papers and say, I need you to sign all these papers. And these papers you're signing are for something called a COA. Okay, quality people, what's a COA? Uh-oh. Certificate of Analysis. A certificate of analysis is the final document that is included when we ship out the drugs or a product. It's signed by the quality manager. It's a legal document that says everything followed all of our procedures, everything met every one of our testing criteria. If you're wrong, that is a serious thing to sign. Wow, I'm starting to scare myself. I'm going to have this mystery cup over here. Hang on. Oh, that seriously needs coffee control. It's really dreadful. Did you know that coffee doesn't last over the weekend if you leave milk in it? I'm serious, but you know, I'm too cheap to throw it out. So that's the way that works. In addition to signatures, everything is dated. A signature, Rim, stop yawning. A signature and no date is real trouble. Mistakes, a single line crossed through them. Did you guys do these before? So you're super good. So when you do a lab book for me, this will never happen. What do you do if you have to add paper to your lab book? Let's say you make a graph on Excel and you want to put it in there.
You can tape it in.
Tape it and
sign and date it.
vote.
You have to tape it by law on one side only. For example, in the margin. Anything else is considered an attempt to conceal data. That is a major nonconformance on the spot. When that new page goes in there, if it's on page 10, it is now called page 10.1. Every requirement of the book applies. A title, the page number, a date, a signature, any figures, graphs, or data are titled and numbered appropriately. Everything that applies to the book now applies to that page. It's a serious place to make mistakes. I've seen people put a stack of things in, for example, for MSDS data. They sign the first one and nothing else. Every one of those missed signatures is half a mark off. In my labs, you'll start your book with 30 marks. At the end of the year, I'll take your book and do a full-on forensic audit. You could get 100%. Not likely, though. Is that scary? The other hand, I'll be there and looking at your book and nagging you continuously. The other thing is, I or Braden or Susan are more than willing to look at your book, not when I'm marking, obviously, to look at your book and point out where you might need to do corrections, just like an internal auditor who's on your side. Take advantage of the help. If an expert offers you help, yeah, you might want to take that for free. I hate to write this in here, but permanent ink. I've seen people try to use the erasable blue ink, which I immediately go like this. The entire book is non-compliant. That is a major non-conformance. Pencil, there is no such thing as pencil. These are not the droids you're looking for. We do not use pencil. It does not occur. It is wrong. We do not use whiteout. Most places will not even have whiteout on the premises. Do not tear out a page to try to hide something. That will get you fired on the spot. Wow, it's so mean. I feel good about that, but it is, seriously kind of mean. Questions or thoughts? Have you had your books audited yet? Not by me, though.
Yes.
But he's so nice, though. I'll have to go yell at him. So I want to just walk through kind of thing that an auditor or you could use. I include this in my lab manuals, and none of the students ever use it. The way I look at your book or anybody else's book, I take a ruler, I put it down, and I read everything on that line. I do it for everything you've written in the book. So in terms of he's probably not going to see it, that's simply not going to happen. I'm going to review every piece of ink in that book. Let's go through it. Permanent book, hardbound record? Yep, no. Any loose pages? And loose could mean it's partially torn out. They're serious about this. Is there a clear identification on the front? I have had lots of books turned in. No name, no number, no information. I mean, the work inside is great, but it doesn't exist. Are all the pages numbered? Are all the inserted pages numbered? No missing pages, it's a big problem. Everything in ink, no pencil, no whiteout, fastening on one side. Is it legible? And you've seen I write like a monkey. When I do lab books, I only write on every second line. I write in big block letters. I have learned it's much easier to make the auditor happy. Make it easy for them to see. I've had people write in super small script. I'm trying to explain. The auditor is going to take one look at that and go, it's illegible, and walk away. You need to make sure, don't be cute, make sure it's legible. Where was I? Appropriate sign-offs. That includes your signature. It includes authorizations or PTUs if something's expired, or if you have a data point that's an outlier. You can't ignore it, and you cannot pretend it hasn't happened. It's critical you go back and do that. Every entry, every piece of data, every page is titled. If you have a graph number 1, you've titled it. Graph number 1, concentration gradient of so-and-so. That graph has a number, a title, a signature, and a date. If you put in a table, pH meter standardization table, it should see table 2, pH meter standardization. It's got a signature and a date. If you put an entry in, unlike the notes we just saw, it is critical you explain what it is. The auditor may just flip your book open to that page. It better all be there. This one is serious. All of the hardware you used, all of the chemicals and materials are fully traceable. By the way, have you guys used those flow hoods in the lab ever? The vented hoods in the lab? Did you all write down the calibration dates that are on the meters on the back side of them?
Nope.
Yeah, see, look, boom, done, like dinner. Yeah, walk around to the back. There's a flashing green light and a calibrated meter that tells you if they're working. Oops. You guys use thermometers? Were they NISTI calibrated thermometers? Were they? Rim, you're lying. You're nodding, but it's completely a lie. I also, as an auditor, make things up. Does your analysis have LRF support? They go, yes. And I say, LRF stands for little rubber feet. It's just to see if they're lying. Little rubber feet. That's right, Anissa, you heard me. Every page, every piece of paper, every insert. A unique number, an accurate date. Are the sign-offs complete? Everywhere. Again, consider a ruler line by line. They're not going to miss it. When you're checking your own book, you should check it with a ruler line per line. And the single greatest advice I can give you to auditing is if you wrote it wrong once, you're likely to read it wrong every other time. I strongly encourage you to swap books with one of your colleagues because they will view it differently than you do. Is every activity defined? Don't just say 1% milk, made a gel, had a sandwich. Those are all interesting sentences, but none of them have any specific meaning. Are the methods written out, described, or sourced? Method as per lab manual, number so-and-so, pages so-and-so to so-and-so. That is sourced. If it's not there, it's not legal. Lot numbers, batch numbers, serial numbers, model numbers, expiry, or brand. Bearing in mind, not everything has an expiry. Boiling chips are made of granite. They will expire in 1 billion years. 1 billion years? Yeah, 1 billion years. All the figures, graphs, and inserts, signed, dated, titled. The raw data and the calculations are separate. It is critically important that you show all of your calculations. If you write down 1.15%, I'm going to say, where's the calculation that shows you did that? Oh, I did it in my head. You might have, but you didn't write it down. You probably don't know this. There's a difference between raw data and results. Raw data is the first capture of information. It could be the first numbers you wrote down. It could be the first printout off a machine. But the raw data is data that's as original as possible, the very first capture. People often do this incorrectly. A result is typically when you've made a graph using raw data or a table. It does not necessarily mean it's the first capture of information. People like you to keep your raw data separate from other stuff because if there's a mistake, you'll probably find it in the raw data. Did you guys look at that in your QC? I don't think so. Wow. I think I'm going to wear the black suit next week just to be that guy. So mean. Questions or thoughts? Okay. No questions, no thoughts. If you have a process deviation, if you've required an authorization, you need to make it really obvious. I usually put a star and say deviation from method or method deviation authorized by so-and-so. They sign it, then PTU. But you need to make it crystal clear that you know what the process is and that by logical choice, you're doing something different. I will give you some chemicals to work with that I know are expired. I expect you to catch that and get authorization. I also will give you a few procedures that will not work as they're written. If you're going to make it work, I expect you to catch it and make a rational decision, which will require authorization. Wow, I'm so mean. So Lulu, on a scale of 10, am I like at least a 7.5 mean? At least. Wow, tough crowd today.
David,
That's not Lulu. What?
is it all right if maybe I missed the material, I missed raw data, sorry, and I put raw data part 2 or
Sure, but
material
how would you
part
miss
2?
your data in real time? Where it happens is in a school lab where someone's not writing it down, just basically hanging out, playing on their phone. Would you like to know the real thing? Usually groups of larger than 2 divide into skill sets. Someone is good at math becomes doing all the calculations. Someone else, to look busy in front of the instructor or their supervisor, will take chemicals and go and hide in the balance room and weigh things out and not do the thinking part. The other person who's doing the work hasn't written things down and will go later and transcribe things. And then you get methods and materials broken into a bunch of different sections. I don't do that. I'll leave an entire page or 2 for materials, and I'll start my results further. And if I don't use that space at the end of the day, I'll put a line through it and initial it. I always make sure I've got miles of room. I own the entire book. It looks suspicious if it's showing up in different places. If it's on a different day, sure, it makes sense. On the same day, that's weird. What's going on over there? Make sense?
So it's all right if I leave a lot of space for a
Absolutely.
section?
Absolutely. You have to cross it out, initial it when you're done, but you should never ever choke up space. I've seen people, well, I'll just leave this much space. And I'm going, how could you anticipate it would take so little space? That's crazy. If you do have to say, go somewhere else, you would write continued on page so and so, and then it would say continued from. The problem is, if I see 20 of those, there's a real problem here, right? It's not just a one-off. It's something's fishy in the method. All right. You're going to have to get data from other people, off the PlagiarNet, from a reference, from your colleagues, or from a different lab. That is not your work. It has to have correct authorization or permission to use somebody else's property in your book. It goes on all the time. I will ask you to make composite graphs with data from everyone. You will have to have them initial that graph saying that there's permission to use someone else's property. The difference between citations and plagiarism. If you take someone else's work and you throw it into a paper and hand it in, that's plagiarism. If, like a lazy professor, you take someone else's work, you throw it in quotations and cite it as their work, it's perfectly legal. That's a citation. So make sure if it's not your work, you've got it signed off. No big deal. If you're going to have references, they have to be traceable. I say that because I've seen way too many stupid things. Google is not a reference. Literally in quotes, the internet is not a reference. Wiki is not a reference. If you're going to use a URL, it has to go to exactly the correct place. No exceptions. If it's a book, you write down the ISBN number, the author, and the edition. You have to be specific. Safety data. It can't close. It has to be accurate. One of the things I recommend students do, both for their own safety, but also so you can create a portfolio, you should be making an MSDS portfolio. For example, you're going to work with HCl and NaOH a lot. So the first time I use it, I would write down the acute dangers, the chronic dangers, any PPE, and any other fact, and then a URL. And I would paste that into a Word document so that if I ever use it later, I've already got the stuff sourced. I've got the information I need. And at the end of the course or program, I have a whole binder, an MSDS portfolio of all sorts of different chemicals, their handling requirements, and their risks. What employer is going to say, wow, you're really organized with handling those chemicals. I hate you. They're not going to say that. Then you know what happens? I've seen people say, could you organize our chemical room, please? I've heard that a lot. It counts. Training is adequate for the required task. There's 68 general areas that you cycle through when you're auditing a facility. You could be checking, how do they control incoming materials? How do they do a particular analysis? Do they have a product recall process in place? Can they validate their incoming materials control? All that said, just like you have to train incoming chemicals and hardware, you train the people. You train the people for the quality system, for the safety, and for your job function. One of the very important audit things we do is, I'll tell you, in 3 weeks we're coming in, I'm going to need to see the training records for your people. And it's not a shallow dive. If you're the person who ever is running the HPLC, even as the backup, I'm going to want to see where you were trained off and that you have qualifications that are adequate to that task. And they are not kidding. They're not going to make you do push-ups or anything weird like that, but they want to see that you've gone to a school with credentials that indicates you can actually do this. I will also be looking to see your in-house training, because any of these complex procedures probably have an in-house training requirement. And that way, I can go to your quality manager, ask to see the in-house training records for people first. Oh yeah, we trained them on the assay for interleukin-2. Oh, okay. So I can see that you were trained on that. Now I can go and look at your credentials to see if I line up with the requirements for that test. So you're testing equipment, coming in, you're testing chemicals coming in, and you test to make sure that the people are up to the task. I mean, you don't want to be flying to Hawaii and I come staggering out of the cockpit and going, does anybody know how to land a plane? You don't want to hear that. What you want are competent people who can demonstrate competencies flying that plane. Also, Hawaii is very expensive. All right, you guys. Questions or thoughts? Yes.
I have a question. So when we write continued from the page something, if it's on the other side, but what if it's like that and I'm continuing from this page here? Do I still write
If
it?
it's within sight on 2 pages,
Mm-hmm.
if you can see it follows, you don't have to do it. Once you flip a page or it's out of sight, you have to do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or if you're doing the Anand trick where you write down materials, then a bit of calculations, then a bit of grocery shopping, then a bit of materials, you got to do it. If you keep splitting things up, pathologically, they are going to say something, right? Again, I just leave a huge chunk of space for every one of those tasks. I only use every second line, and I make sure that it's easy so an auditor can see, well, he stopped there and he continues over there. It never, ever, ever hurts to make it easy for the auditor. They really like to, for them, they're going to get $10,000 for 3 days' work, no matter what. But they like it when you're successful at what you do, right? It's depressing and it's not much fun when there's a bunch of stuff wrong. If there's a number of major nonconformances in Canada, they can literally put a padlock on the door. You're out of work till this is fixed. Health Canada can come to your business and shut you down. Did you guys know that? Yeah, the rules get weirder, sort of the more danger that's involved in a product. All right, you guys. So the lab notebook things are good. Hopefully, in the fall, I can come and yell at your books in person, which will actually be a lot of fun. Well, it'll be fun for me, let's face it, except for the marking. I have to answer marking lab books. I typically will face 5,000 pages of your stuff. Write nicely, please. What's that, Anissa? You're not going to write nicely? Oh, that's so mean. It's funny, though. All right.
I have a question regarding the midterm.
Yeah, next week's midterm, yeah. Just kidding. I just want to see your face. Do that face again.
Because it says the 9th.
Well, I will, it's or TBA. I will not give an exam until we've passed the material in the notes.
In the notes, okay.
Remember, your organic prep wasn't quite where I wanted it, so I had to go back.
Mm-hmm.
So I always throw TBAs in there to be announced. So there'll be a week's announcement. I see on the first week of March there, you got a bunch of crap going on in other courses.
Yes.
Now, I got to be honest. My actual Dr. Evil heart says we should put them all on the same day. But then the students are all crying all over the place, and I can't stand all the whining and nagging. Oh, it's horrible. So I'd like to make sure that we spread it out. So if that has to be a week later, I'll continue lecturing on stuff that's not on that exam. But I want to make sure that you've got a nice and easy chance. This is an open book test, right? I'm doing an open book test. Don't you like that?
We would love that.
Well, yeah, it's online. It's easy peasy, guys. And just to tell you how my tests work, they'll typically be between 10 and 20 questions. There will provide a technical definition of blah, 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 blah. Provide a labeled diagram of. There will be compare and contrast. And I will have a review with you and give you example questions, not from the exam. I'll just read you the notes and give you examples, just so you can see how I do it. It's a take-home exam. It will not be murderously impossible. Certainly not. It'll be on materials I have covered. I deeply hate when professors say, I'm going to test you on something, and then they say, oh, you should have done the assigned readings. What? So it'll come directly out of the stuff I've talked about with you, with the handwritten notes, okay? I could be lying, but it seems like an awful lot of work. So let me see. So you want the test on the 4th with the other tests all at once? Is that what we decided? No? Wow, hard to please. Yeah, no, I never ever like that. So it's always important to communicate when they are. You know, if we can finish the course notes and even fire in an exam before final exam week, that would be great. We're going to have our online lab exam before the final too. And I'm looking there to spread things out. In terms of the quantity material and the difficulty, I do feel that the psychology and the intellectual trouble at the end of first year is probably the hardest. It's the most stuff colliding all at once. So I'll try to spread it out so you've got a reasonable amount of time to do a reasonable amount of work. Is that okay? I could be lying, but you know, Again, the secret thing, terrifying students. They don't give a present for that. Students are scared and stressed and tired right out of the factory. They got families. They got jobs. They got a bunch of freaky professors yelling weird stuff all day long. It's actually better if students are presented with reasonable questions in a reasonable time frame on material they've studied. Super boring, but fair. Is that okay? Yeah, I do not like bait and switch. Not going to happen. So I'm joking. There is no surprise exam next week. When I've covered the stuff in the notes, I'll say, we've just finished the material. It'll be on the midterm, and then we'll talk about it. We're not going to vote. If we go to vote for exams, people start saying things like 2089 or never. It just doesn't work. But I will do my best to pick a time that works for all of us together. Okay? Is that good? You know our policy at the college, though, right? No refunds. Just kidding. There's refunds. All right. I'm going to let you guys go. And H2, you wanted to talk? I'm going to log out and log back in with you in a second, okay? I will
Okay,
stop
should I
sharing.
log out? No, okay.
I'm going to log everybody out, and then I'll come back and bother you personally. Okay, guys. We'll see you later. It's going to be
Bye.
really horrible on Wednesday. Oh, yes. All sorts of organic structures that you memorize perfectly. What's the structure of an ether? 3, 2, 1. Organic next year, too. Woo! Ether. Lion's roar. R-O-R. Oh, yeah. I don't care how you learn it, just as long as you learn the drills. Take care.
Thank you.